Greetings and welcome back to Pseudo's journey through the Japanese air tech tree in War Thunder, a series of subpar guides made for unskilled free-to-play players by an unskilled free-to-play player. On this unexpectedly dandy day, we shall be having a look at both of the Ki-44s in the Japanese air tech tree, the Ki-44-I and the Ki-44-I. These are fighter aircraft which can be found as the first vehicle in their respective folders at BRs 2.7 and 3.7 respectively in Rank 2 in the second line of the Japanese air tech tree. The Ki-44s were a part of the three-plane series containing the Ki-43, Ki-44, and Ki-45 made for the Japanese Army. The Ki-44 is a very notable divergence from the standard Japanese planes, being, quite frankly, bad in horizontal turns and having a very strong engine which can allow it to seriously contest many of the planes of its era in that regard. However, the flight performance will require an entirely new playstyle not seen again in the tree until the J2Ms, which feel very much like successors of the Ki-44. As this is another two-plane special, we shall divide the video up into a section covering the shared metrics of both Ki-44s, and then break into individual sections covering the intricacies of each separate Ki-44. To start out with the performance of the Ki-44s, they both are rather poor at turning in the horizontal plane. If you're playing these right after the Ki-43s or Zeros, they will feel completely worthless in a conventional turn fight. The rudder is fairly bad and the ailerons are equally bad. Rolling to get guns on target feels either so slow you can't line them up in time, or so fast the plane has done a full 360-degree spin while you were just trying to turn to one side or the other. These combine to make the plane seem very stiff and annoying to get guns on target, especially if the enemy is maneuvering. However, the rest of the performance is nowhere near as bad. Notably, the vertical energy retention and turn performance is much, much better. In fact, it's one of the single best planes in the entire tech tree at this. Not only that, but you can prop hang for an incredibly long time. If you go vertical after reaching high speeds, you can sometimes sit at a 50 or 60 degree angle from the horizontal, to the point where you start doubting if gravity is functioning properly. The engine is what facilitates this, and on both Ki-44s it is a strong point of the aircraft. It has especially decent low-speed acceleration, up to about 450 km per hour, which you can reach in level flight with WEP enabled. This isn't quite as fast as other planes like the Bf-109s and P-51s of this rank, but you will be able to outpace many other fighters, or just drag out chases long enough for you to return to your teammates for help. The sustained climb performance is pretty good, again about matching the P-51s and Bf-109s of this rank. I typically recommend climbing at about a 15 to 17 degree angle depending on which Ki-44 you're playing in to keep a bit of a higher speed in case you need to use it. Only aircraft with an air spawn or planes like the P-38 and XP-50 can outperform you in a climb. A major issue to note is that the engines of the Ki-44s love to overheat. You need to be very cautious and not hold WEP the entire match, lest you burn your engine out, which is not hard to do. Keep an eye on it and make sure to lay off the throttle for a bit when the water and oil temperatures go orange. The dive performance is also incredibly good, which is quite useful due to being able to gain so much energy so quickly. Despite the engine not being the best at higher speeds, you can quickly get to 550 to 650 km per hour in a dive, and sometimes even well past 700 km per hour. The controls don't lock up too much either, making this plane a great diver. The durability of the Ki-44s is unsurprisingly quite bad. Despite the Ki-44 being much heavier of an aircraft than nearly any other small Japanese fighter of the war, it still is much lighter than its contemporaries and especially loves to get lit on fire from a single hit. If you do get lit on fire, try to turn off the engine and dive down, as that's really your only hope of survival. Looking at this, the general playstyle for the Ki-44 should be a very vertical one. You have the amazing ability to pretty much just refuse the laws of physics when they tell you to stall. You can climb quite well, and you get going really fast in the dive. Climb up, dive down, and BNZ enemies. Remember, your capability to aim your nose at enemies is always quite limited, so be thinking ahead and only attack enemies which are stalled out, distracted, or are moving in a straight line. If you miss and they aren't going incredibly quickly, don't be scared to pull them straight up. Roll a little as you do so to avoid their gunfire, and just keep climbing pretty close to straight up until they stall out below you. After you take them out, start climbing again. Anytime that you aren't actively following an enemy or in combat, you should be climbing. In the Ki-44s, altitude means speed in a dive, and speed in a dive means more time that you can prop hang over an enemy to stall them out and collect easy kills. As such, altitude is your lifeblood. Both Ki-44s have landing, takeoff, and combat flaps, which rip at 250, 412, and 433 kilometers per hour respectively. I really never feel the need to use any of them, as takeoffs are rather easy and landings need to be done at a bit higher speeds anyway. The combat flaps really don't make you any better in a turn, and the only time I use them is when I'm at the peak of a vertical climb and just need to flip over to get guns on target on the enemies stalled out below me. The wings rip at a very high 850 kilometers per hour, and the gears at a much lower 250 kilometers per hour. Alright, now that we've looked at the general characteristics, let's dig a bit deeper into both of these planes, starting out with the Ki-44-I. This plane can be found at battle rating 2.7 as the first of two planes in its folder. The main differences between the Ki-44s are their engines, their weights, their armaments, and quite importantly, though obviously, their battle ratings. The Ki-44-I has a weaker engine, but is subsequently lighter than the later variant. It is not as fast as the Ki-44-I, taking longer to accelerate, not reaching as high of speeds in level flight and climbs, but it can turn slightly better. This is the most major difference and generally justifies the battle rating difference. Overall, these planes do most of their work in the vertical and speed domains, so the lighter weight for a worse engine is a definite downgrade. However, being at battle rating 2.7, the Ki-44-I is incredibly strong. Very few aircraft at this battle rank can hope to match you in a climb, and even fewer can approach you in a stall maneuver. Not only that, but at this battle rating, most of the people you fight are less experienced and willingly will chase you into a vertical maneuver, which they would need 3 times as much speed as they have to get a shot at winning against you. Your playstyle should very much embody this. Nobody can match you in a vertical climb, so use that. Climb up high, dive down on enemies if they're slow, and pull up again. Classic B and Z behavior. However, if an enemy knows you're there, goad them to try to pull up towards you and give them just enough hope that they can catch you in a vertical maneuver that they follow you without a second thought. Then, once they've locked into that maneuver, actually start trying. Pull your nose up while avoiding their gunfire and show them what making a mockery of gravity really looks like. As soon as you start seeing wingtip vapors and see them begin to peel their nose off target as they stall, throw out your combat flaps and collect the easiest kill of your life. If you are in the position where an enemy is at the same altitude as you and you don't have a massive speed advantage, don't panic. Just turn away from them and maintain a level flight and flee towards your teammates. If you can't, try to go into a bit more of a vertical move, though nothing crazy, just to start hoping that you can drain off some of their excess speed. Then really pull the nose up when they get close and hope that their aim is bad. As for your weapons, you get 2 7.7mm Type 89 machine guns and 2 12.7mm Hole 103 machine guns. The 7.7mm machine guns are absolutely awful, and though they have a decent amount of ammo, generally these cannot even be considered weapons at this battle rating. If you run out of 12.7mm ammo, you just go back to base. There are several ammo belts, with the default being my go-to, as it's not worth wasting SL on any of the other ones. The 12.7mm Hole 103s are actually quite decent though. They're nothing insane, but at this battle rating, 2 of them are enough to deal very solid damage after just a few shots. Typically, it won't take more than a few hits to take an enemy down or weaken them to a defenseless state. Sometimes, you may even get a lucky shot and rip off a wing of their plane in one hit. The major limitation is that you only have 500 rounds between the 2 of them, so watch your ammo a bit and don't just spray and pray. They get some fantastic air target belts, which you should always be using, as the 12.7mm Japanese high explosive fragmentation incendiary shells are simply fantastic. For the visuals, I've always thought the Ki-44s look similarly stupid to the Ki-43s. They have a very tiny fuselage with a massive swollen section up front for the engine. The wings are nifty though, as they almost look to be slanted forwards a bit if you're looking at the plane from the top, which is not something you see every day. The Ki-44-I only gets its default paint job, which is a very standard green and white coloration. As for the cockpit, it has overall quite good visibility. Remember, I really never play first person, so this is all a subjective view from somebody who has no idea what they're talking about. Because you sit up high enough and have a very narrow headrest, your visibility is great sideways, rearwards, and upwards. There's a bit of forward bracing, but overall the visibility isn't too obstructed. You do still sadly have one of the telescopic gun sights, which are not great, but not great is still far greater than the gun sight of the Kika. We'll look at the finances and modifications for the Ki-44-I at the end of the video. For now, let's look at the up-engined and up-armed version of the Ki-44 family, the Ki-44-I. The Ki-44-I can be found at battle rating 3.7 as the first of two planes in its folder. It follows directly after the Ki-44-I in the tech tree. The major upgrades of the Ki-44-I are its engine and its armaments. In terms of its engine, it is much more powerful. This is noticed both in climbs where you can easily go 50 to 60 km per hour faster at the same climb angle as the Ki-44-I, and in level flight where you accelerate quicker and reach quite noticeably higher straight line speeds in the Ki-44-I. Not only that, but vertical stall maneuvers can be performed for even longer than the Ki-44-I, allowing you to defy gravity for just a little bit longer. Overall, you never really notice the bit of added weight, as the power-to-weight ratio is noticeably higher, and you shouldn't really be doing any maneuvers where that weight is noticeable in these planes anyway. You do have quite the irksome issue of having to deal with enemies that are quite frequently at battle rating 4.0 and above, though. At this battle rating, the BF-109s and P-51s are really quite annoying, still outperforming you in a straight line and having climb rates much closer to yours. Not only that, but they're frequently smarter and will know not to go vertical with you, and will rather choose to maintain their energy or outturn you if you're on their tail. You have to play much more tactically, going for enemies which are already very slow, and you need to dogfight enemies much slower and more methodically to train their energy, not just trying to end the dogfight in one maneuver like you did with the earlier Ki-44. Again, be wary of the BF-109s and FW-190s, as both have vertical energy retention which is very close to yours, and both can match or outperform you in a turn. Most of all, be careful of P-38s. They can match and beat you in all your flight performance metrics, so unless they are already going very slow, I highly recommend against fighting them alone. The armament of the Ki-44-I is another noticeable improvement, giving you a full set of 4 12.7mm Hole 103 machine guns to play with. This many 12.7mm machine guns is simply excellent, with a total burst mass of over 1 kg per second, allowing you to tear through most enemies. Once you get guns on target, it won't take more than a couple quick bursts to take an enemy down, and frequently it only takes 1 or 2. The ammo count definitely isn't the highest, with only 250 rounds per gun, allowing you just under 17 seconds of total trigger time. But with their damage, it should be easy to get a handful of kills. These also get the fantastic air targets belts with lots of high explosive fragmentation incendiary rounds, which you should always use when you have the chance. This is really one of the first fighters in the tech tree to feel it has the proper amount of firepower. The Ki-44-I also does have several ordnance options, with either 2 50kg Army Type 94 GPHE bombs or 2 100kg Army Type 94 GPHE bombs. Overall, these are very weak bombs and only weigh your plane down, so I never recommend using them. For the visuals of the Ki-44-I, it has a much nicer paint job than the previous Ki-44, having the same green and white paint job but with added white and yellow patterns. Apart from that, the overall airframe is the same and has the same stupid looking fuselage and nifty, almost forward swept looking wings. The cockpit of the Ki-44-I has similarly great visibility to the Ki-44-I, allowing you to see in nearly any direction clearly due to the very small wings and high up cockpit. Noticeably, you got rid of the telescopic gun sight for a holographic one, which is much, much better in my opinion. If the telescopic gun sight was much better than that of the Kika, this one would blow the gun sight of the Kika out of the water. On to the finances of both these planes. The Ki-44-I costs 7,900 RP to research, 10,000 SL to purchase, and 3,000 SL to slot, bringing us up to a total of 13,000 SL to buy and slot. The repair cost of a fully upgraded Ki-44-I is 448 SL in arcade battles and 917 SL in realistic battles. The Ki-44-I costs 9,200 RP to research, 16,000 SL to purchase, and 4,500 SL to slot, bringing us up to a total of 20,500 SL to buy and slot. The repair cost of a fully upgraded Ki-44-I is 627 SL in arcade battles and 1,364 SL in realistic battles. For the Ki-44-I's modifications, you should start with the radiator to help with the engine overheating, then get the compressor and the engine. Then get the new 12.7mm belts and guns. Get the engine injection, cover, and wings repaired to get as much speed as you can. Then get the remaining performance mods, followed by the useless 7.7mm belts and guns. The total cost of the modifications is 6,930 RP and 6,750 SL. For the Ki-44-I's modifications, immediately start off by getting the 12.7mm belts for their sweet air targets belts, followed by the radiator if you're having engine overheating issues. Then get the compressor, engine, and new 12.7mm guns. Then get the engine injection, cover, and wings repair, followed by the remaining performance mods. After that, pick up the bombs for brownie points. The total cost of all the modifications is 8,400 RP and 9,390 SL. That's a wrap on the Ki-44-I and Ki-44-II, and actually the only Ki-44s in the tech tree. These planes were disliked by their pilots in real life for their dramatically different feel and flight performance from the rest of the Japanese fighters, so I can't blame you for having troubles making the mindset shift required to play them. I recommend just trying some different things out and really focusing on learning to read the altitude and speed of enemies to learn how best to deal with them. Think vertical thoughts in these planes. If you find out you like this playstyle, the J2Ms later in the tech tree are quite similar, but also have the patented Japanese turning capabilities added in as the cherry on top. I'd be honored to see you next time, where we'll be looking at a little bit of a painful plane, which is the continuation and much up-armed version of the Ki-45 interceptor family, the Ki-102 Otsu. Whether you're there or not, I thank you for tuning in today.